It's the occult pod. Welcome to occult pod. We talk about conspiracies and other different things about the simulation. Welcome to occult pod. Welcome to occult pod. Hope you enjoy the show.
Well, guys, it's been 1.5 months since we've last done an episode with Sylvie, but we're back on another episode of Occult Pod, and let's just start it off by touching on what we've been up to since this last episode. If you are listening on YouTube, we've put an update on the community post, roughly speaking, on what we're doing, just traveling and doing things related to our careers. So, Rowan, you want to tell the audience what you've been up to since our last episode?
Yeah, bro, it's been a minute. Welcome back to all 93 subscribers on YouTube and whoever's listening on Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. I think we had listeners in India, didn't we? Last time we checked.
Yes.
Which was pretty impressive.
Yeah, you did.
So we've got people all across the globe. Thank you for tuning in. But yeah, what have I been up to since I've been away? So the last episode we did was end of July. So since then, we went to, well, we didn't. I went to Ireland with the boys from FSC, which is the Freedom Seekers Community, which is a group of us who network a channel and we build a big community between ourselves of like-minded individuals. And it was a great experience. Did some surfing, went to the gym quite a lot. Yeah, it was just great to experience the brotherhood. And then after that, I went to Scotland to perform in the Edinburgh Fringe because I'm an actor. So I had a show up there about the NHS, so the National Health Service. I played like a villain, like a bad guy, which was such a funny thing to do because I've never really played a villain before. But a lot of people tell me that I've got a villain look about me, so I rolled with it, went for it, and had a blast. I actually I went out for drinks with Sam Travolta, who is the brother of John Travolta. So if he's listening to this podcast, shout out to him. Which is a pretty crazy experience. So it was part of the family in a sense now. And yeah, we're up there performing for about 2.5 weeks. If for anyone that's ever done the Edinburgh Fringe, it's a great experience. It's basically just a culmination of thousands of different shows that people put on. Just art expression, essentially. But yeah, I would recommend it if anyone's ever in Scotland to go to the Edinburgh Fringe. And since then, I've just been working, really. And I went to Wales this past weekend. So I've been to all 4 corners of the UK in the past month, which is pretty impressive. I'm well-travelled. I'm a very well-travelled, well-versed man now. And I'd speak Welsh, Irish, and Scottish. So, yeah, getting my books up. But yeah, I've just been keeping myself busy. And I am very happy to be back doing the podcast. It feels like it's been about a year, but also, it will be about a year's anniversary since we started the podcast. So for anyone that's been joining us on this journey for the entire year, shout out to you. Shout out to you.
Yeah, and now it's time for me to say what I've done. And I've been in Africa, East Africa more specifically, in a country called Tanzania. So I spent practically the whole of August there. It was surreal, as you know, it's a really great country. The people are great, and I just didn't really enjoy my time there. You stayed in the city, like close to the Indian Ocean, so there's so many beaches that I went to, hiking and, seeing the animals and, just hanging around with locals. It was really, really good. And, you know, you develop a tan, you get used to the weather. The weather's insane, 29 degrees. And, like me, I love the warm weather, so it was perfect for me. So, yeah, it was unbelievable. And, I was pretty disappointed when I left, but you have to leave, to get back to the work and the mission went back here. So, but other than that, it was a really, really great holiday and a much needed holiday too, because it was the hard work was put in for that. And yeah, nice to be
Yeah,
back doing episodes again with Rowan.
Big facts. It feels like we didn't take our foot off the gas, really. We were doing an episode at least once a month or once every 2 weeks for about a year. I don't think we ever had a hiatus, did we? So it was well-deserved, I think, just a little break in between. Even if we were keeping ourselves busy, we still needed a bit of a rest from from what we were doing the podcast, you can definitely get too immersed into this sort of thought pattern where you're always consuming. Like it's all what we touched on in the last episode with Sylvie, that you can just get so caught up in the labyrinth of the occult that it just becomes kind of a mind virus and you just get stuck. And you just need a break from it every now and then. You just need a dose of normality and a dose of reality. Take yourself away from all these kooky thoughts, schizophrenic thoughts. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Now in Gombe, I know I did for myself, but did you experience any synchronicities while you were out in Tanzania?
Yeah, actually, like when we would be going to places, like I'd be seeing like there'd be a phone number, and at the top it'd say, Freemason. Yeah, so
Yo,
I think the Freemasons in Tanzania are trying to get young people to try uh, recruit them basically, which obviously, as we know, is no good. So that was something I did see for myself many times there. I wish I'd taken pictures, but I didn't. But it is what it is, and that was what I saw. And so, in the Freemasons, they're not just they're all over the place, all over the world. So yeah,
sounds a
just
bit like
a few.
Coney 2012. That
Yeah, it
remember
does.
Coney 2012?
Yeah,
trying to recruit the kids to come join the Freemasons, come join Coney 2012.
yeah, that's
Very
it.
much got the same energy about it, I think.
Hmm.
Freemasons are
Like
everywhere, though. When I go sell for my job, because I sell dog food for anyone that's interested, but when I go sell, you'll always see these stalls and stuff. Like I've seen a few stalls where it's like Freemasonry, you can just sign up. But obviously, that's low level Freemasonry. I actually had a conversation with someone whilst I was working. They came up to me and was talking about the Freemasons. They were saying, "Yeah, if you want to get started, you could just contact me." And it seemed very nice. Though. I think a lot of low level Freemasonry is very charitable and admirable. I don't think it's necessarily very evil from the bottom up. I think we only speculate because we don't really understand like the lower level side of things. I don't think that's too bad, but I think it's once you get up. But it's the same in any society really. The higher you go in a hierarchy, the more there is to lose. So people are always going to try and blackmail you and things like that. So you're always having to watch your back. But that is
yeah,
cool.
definitely.
And I think we've got confirmation there that Ngombe is now a Freemason because being very sus.
Yeah, I am definitely not a Freemason, and I wouldn't advise anyone to join that secret society. Even if it is the low level, like you said, it perhaps is nice. I mean, they're not gonna invite you in and start being all nasty to you, otherwise you'd leave. But suck you in, and then once you go up, maybe things get even worse. But Rowan, you shared some synchronicities with us and with me and Sylvia in the group chat whilst you was out in Scotland. So what have you got
Yeah,
for us?
yeah. So one of the things I did in Scotland, it's sort of a part-time job to make money up there. Is you do leafleting, so you're essentially advertising for other people's shows. So you're handing out leaflets to the public that are passing. And one of the people that I did that for was a guy called Philip. I won't say his full name here just to keep him a bit anonymous. But he was a comedian essentially. And I was handing out leaflets for him, but he looks exactly like Sylvia, which was a very funny coincidence. And I think Sylvia said something about how his nickname was something like Costal or something like that, and
Yes.
his surname was very similar to that name. So it was a really weird coincidence. Obviously, there's a nice little synchronicity there. And the second one is the bigger one, I think. So I only realised this about a week and a half into staying in the place, but the place I was staying was just outside of the city centre. It's next to the coast. And I was just checking my maps one day and I went to look at like the name of the place, and it was called Trinity, which I found very weird. Considering the fact that we were just talking about like the Trinity event and things like that, with the nuclear explosions in Oppenheimer in the last episode, which was at the Trinity test site and things like that. And there was a building called, like a place of interest called Alien Rock, which was literally right next to where I was staying, called Alien Rock, which I thought was crazy because obviously we're talking about tritium, which was an element that was found at the nuclear test site, which was essentially called Alien Rock. That's what people referred to it as, which I thought was very strange. So I was staying in Trinity, and there was a place called Alien Rock, which was like literally right next to where I was staying. So it's just a very weird coincidence or synchronicity. But I went to visit the Alien Rock place, and it was just a rock climbing venue, which I thought was quite funny. But it was in a church. It was in a renovated church, so there was some sort of symbolism there going on. Yeah, very odd. I think those were the two most notable synchronicities that occurred. There probably were more, but I can't think of them right now. But yeah, it was still bizarre to experience, and the Trinity thing shocked me really. I was like, wow, it's a very weird coincidence.
Yeah, as all coincidences are. And just to touch on today, you mentioned it to me on Thursday when we discussed what days we was going to record this episode, either today, which is Monday, or Wednesday, and we said Monday, and you mentioned it when you were driving back. It is the anniversary of, 9/11. Obviously, this episode, for those who are listening, it'll be released later in the week. So, but today, as we are recording, it is currently the 11th of September, or 9/11. And, a lot of things happened, a lot of theories surround that particular event. So, yeah, I don't know why we chose this date, but I don't know.
Well, it's the 22nd anniversary today, isn't it? First off, let's
Yes.
start by saying rest in peace to all the people that died in that tragic event. Also, yeah, it was just weird. I was driving to work, and I was just like, oh, what day are we going to record this week? Monday. And I was like, I'm sure there's a date around this time that holds some significance. I was like, what date is it? What day is it on Monday? Because I feel like there's a special date. I was like, no way, it's 9/11. It took me a while to work it out. I was like, what date is it? Because I didn't know what day it was that day. So I was just like trying to do the maths in my head. I was like, 3 days from today will be what date? What date is it today? It's the 6th. So 3 days. Oh, it'll be 9/11. So yeah, just a bit of a weird coincidence there. Yeah, we're not making this up, by the way. It is definitely 9/11 today. It's the 9th. It's the 11th of September, sorry, not the 9th of September.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's crazy. So do you want to touch on that particular event, or leave it for another day?
No, 100%. I think it's an interesting topic to talk about. It's one of the biggest conspiracies of all time, isn't it? It's
Yes.
one of the major. It's the first stepping stone, I think, that brings you into the conspiracy sort of universe. Is 9/11. You've got 9/11. You've got the moon landing. You've got Area 51. I feel like those three, the holy trinity of conspiracy theories when you're first getting into conspiracy law. 9/11 is probably the first one I believed. I don't know if I still do. I'm still quite speculative about it, but I feel like once I was a young boy, 13, 14, I was thinking about conspiracies for the first time. 9/11 being an inside job was one of those things I was like, yes, that is definitely true, along with the moon landings as well. But yeah, 9/11 is such an interesting topic because there's so much to delve into. I think the main idea of the conspiracy, you have the memes about, say, like, oh, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams, and Tower 7, Building 7, and the Pentagon, and it looking like a controlled demolition. Those are like the main things. I think the overarching conspiracy is that it was a conspiratorial move from the US government to find an excuse to go into Iraq to basically just get a load of oil from the Middle East.
Yep, and destroy the population and kill millions of people, ultimately. But
100%, and to send people into war, like a forever war, essentially. Like, how many people have lost their lives from not only 9/11 occurring, but also the war that followed,
Mm-hmm. And it's like even going back to the conspiracy thing, there's many videos that perhaps suggest this whole plane crash thing was CGI. I mean, it does look quite compelling, but again, these are just theories. I did believe it at the time. I'm not saying I don't believe it, but they're perhaps both sides are maybe true, if that makes any sense, based on that. Like, because I do say some people died. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna fabricate the number of deaths. Maybe they have. You can't be quite sure about the mainstream media, as we all know. But as with the CGI thing, it is quite clear and evident that that perhaps was the case with the whole plane crash thing.
Yeah, I remember those videos online where it looked like the plane sort of just appeared out of nowhere. It's like came into existence, and also when it pans into it flying into the towers, it sort of like disappears when it flies into it, and the
Mm.
gash size from the plane, like the wingspan, would leave a larger mark than it did in the actual tower, which I think is an argument for the fact that it wasn't actually a plane; it was more of a controlled demolition, and they just made it look like there was a plane flying. I mean, given all the technology they seem to have now with the holograms and things like that, it wouldn't surprise me if they had that technology a long time ago and they're only just releasing it to us now. And that was the first use of it. However, I still think you can argue all day over the semantics of what actually happened. But I genuinely think a lot of people lost their lives, and it was a massive tragedy. Um, but at the same time, I think it's more about the overarching conspiracy of was it an inside job that was sort of perpetrated by the US government? Was it a false flag attack just to essentially get them to go into war in Iraq, and get some oil? I think there was a quote by George Bush's father about 11 years before 9/11, and he said, "There will be a new world order, and the world will be free of terror." So that's sort of like a predictive estimate there. And Alex Jones, I think, also predicted the event back in March 2001 and July 2001. He talked about a mass terror attack on the World Trade Center. If I'm getting that right, I think that was on Infowars.com. So, and then you have all these like we spoke about in one of the earlier podcasts in one of the first episodes. You have everything about the predictive programming. So you have, say, like the Simpsons one, which is a classic, with the 9/11 with Bart holding up the magazine, and then you have, say, like Johnny Bravo with it's like a poster on the wall that has a picture of like the Twin Towers, and it's on fire and it says "coming soon," like a film poster. And then you have other things such as there was a video game that actually came out the same year of the attack, and it was essentially you were you were trying to shoot down planes that were flying into the Twin Towers. There's just countless amounts of different what it seems to be like predictive programming. But as we sort of hold to a theme on this podcast, I think you can make the argument that predictive programming, to a sense, is sort of coincidental in that it was predestined to happen anyway. So I feel like 9/11 is one of these canon events in this timeline where it just sort of has to happen. So it's already in the public subconscious, and then it manifests through art and things like that, and then it essentially brings itself to life, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes complete sense. And, that 9/11 is one of the first things that probably many conspiracy theorists go down in the search of an endless rabbit hole, where that endless rabbit hole leads you to keep searching and searching and searching for the truth. And I think for both of us, I think we could both say that for us, like going down that rabbit hole so much, yeah, there comes a time where you have to stop. And whilst it's interesting and we've spoken about conspiracies, and they're still fun. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still fun to talk about, whether these things happened or not, or if this is true or not with regards to a lot of theories out there. But it just becomes endless and there's no stopping. So you have to stop yourself from consuming too much, I guess. And well, Nick Hinton, he's spoken a lot about that, and he's uh, he's made me realize that as well. You've shared me a lot of his stuff, and it's spot on. And ultimately, through that, you have to almost get back to doing what you did before conspiracies, or find something new that helps you keep track of your life in a sense. I don't know if you can add on to what I've said.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, 100%. I think the main idea, say, from that sort of message, like what Nick's saying is there's only so far you can go into the conspiracy sort of world before you start to become a bit schizophrenic and you start to just believe everything that you hear and you don't know what's real anymore. And I really think that's not great for your psyche. I think the best thing to do is just keep one foot in reality and one foot in sort of the conspiracy world. So if you want to still exist in the conspiracy plane like we are doing, it's very important, like we've done, to take breaks every now and then, have a hiatus, and just distance yourself from it. Because I think you can become too attached to it, and you're essentially, like Nick would say, you're essentially initiating yourself into the Orphic mysteries. You're essentially initiating yourself into the Illuminati. And I feel like that's something that they want, the sort of orchestrating this fake awakening for people where they think they're becoming enlightened, but it's essentially like the Bible talks about with the forbidden fruit is people feeding from the tree of knowledge and essentially initiating themselves into like a darker reality where they want you, because they know that you don't understand, because it's such a labyrinth, it's such a rabbit hole that you just get completely lost and you don't know where you are and you don't know how to navigate. I think that's something that they want us to become quite schizophrenic. So I mean, things like 9/11 and the moon landing being fake are sort of PG in terms of conspiracy, because at the end of the day, they have this sort of grounded conspiracy understanding that it feels more like a government cover up than anything else. It's nothing to do with like the occult necessarily. It's nothing to do with the dark arts. But once you start getting into more of the darker things of say like the Illuminati, say sacrificing, things like that, like darker magic, then it becomes kind of obsessive, and you become essentially schizophrenic. And I think it's part of the move to say like degrading family traditions and things like that, and traditions that we've held for hundreds of years. I think this is part of the sort of process, is introducing a lot of people to like conspiracy and things like that, where they just get completely lost and engulfed into it, because you basically putting yourself into the belly of the beast, really, and it's very hard to navigate once you get into that position. So yeah, I think, as I say, it's very important to keep one foot in and one foot out. You need one foot in the occult, the mysteries and things like that, and one foot in reality, because otherwise you're just going to get completely lost and you become disconnected essentially.
Yeah, I
I feel like
agree.
a lot of people in this probably in this realm, like the conspiracy, would definitely relate to the fact that you become disassociated from reality once you've been too deep into it for a while. You start to question like what's real, what's fake. You know,
Yeah, because I wouldn't say it's happened to us two in particular, but I think for many people that have gone into conspiracies, it's like it perhaps has affected their relationships with friends and family, because once you reach that stage, your friends are not going to agree with your beliefs, your new beliefs, now that you've believed that this is a hoax, this is this, and this is that. 9/11 could be a hoax and the moon landing's fake. If you tell people that, they're not going to believe you, so it kind of makes you isolated as well. So it's hard to kind of realize, okay, I'm a person that has is enlightened in a way, and my friends and family aren't. So it's like, how do I persuade them that this is what I'm saying is true, in a sense? So relationships do start to change, not for me in particular, but for other people, I guess, where people's beliefs are not the same as they were what before your awakening. And also, like, you know they're pulling it openly, like the NFL with the whole script thing. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, what's that?
like like they asked Tom Brady if the NFL is scripted, and they had a piece of paper, right, I have with the script on. So they're putting it in plain sight for people, for with this false awakening. Like, but yeah, it's pretty hilarious watching it. But Tom Brady said that the NFL is not scripted, but they're just mocking you, really.
Yeah, 100%. I think they're playing 4D chess. I think they're miles ahead of us, to be honest. It's kind of hard to keep up because you're not sure if they're bluffing, if something's a psyop or not. It's like the whole thing about Blue Beam coming in. I don't know if you've seen all this stuff about like Blue and the Maui fires.
Yes.
Have you seen the thing about Blue with the Maui fires?
No, I've not seen it.
So there's been like a conspiracy going around that it was directed energy weapons that they've used to start the fire, essentially. And part of the reasoning is because there's a load of buildings, there's cars, there's umbrellas, say for example, that are blue in Maui that have just not set on fire, but the rest of everything around them is completely burned to a crisp. So the idea is they've set it to a certain frequency that just ignores the color blue. But it's stuff like that that I feel like just it's sort of bait for people to latch onto. Like, it's cool in terms of conspiracy, like, oh, what's going on here? Did you use a directed energy weapon? But I feel like people just get too lost in the semantics, and I think that's what they want. I think they want people to just get feisty and start fighting over the little things about conspiracies. I mean, look at the fact of 9/11. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter how it happened and like why it happened, and if jet fuel melts steel beams and if it was a controlled demolition or what. At the same time, it was still used as an excuse to go into Iraq and get a load of oil, and simultaneously a lot of people died and a lot of people lost family. And it's the same with the Maui fires. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter if it was started by arson or it was a directed energy weapon. The fact of the matter is that people lost their lives. The government's doing naff all about it, and they're using it as an excuse to bring in further control. Say with the climate change agenda, global warming. They're saying like, oh look, this is the result of global warming, and we need to bring in more control. We need to bring in the carbon credit system. We need to bring in all this stuff just to ensure that it doesn't get out of control. So the semantics don't necessarily matter, like the little conspiracy things, but they'll have people bickering over whether it was a directed energy weapon or not, ignoring the fact that things are happening to real people. Now, I'm not necessarily making the argument that some things aren't false flags and completely staged, but I think for the most part, there's some where it's not, and usually the fact of the matter is that the government just takes it as an opportunity to take advantage. They're very opportunistic in that way. And to some extent, yeah, probably there is some sort of ritual going on there. But my point is that you shouldn't really get lost over the semantics, and you should look at it for what it is. I mean, it's the same with 9/11 with the control thing. I mean, that was the first time they started introducing increased security control in airports and things like that. So it's just increased control. It's a further step towards like the increased surveillance, Big Brother, all that stuff. So it's still fun to talk about, though. It's 100% still fun to talk about, like all the semantics and things like that, all the little details.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, the breakthrough episode was when we spoke about the simulation theory, and I asked you if you believed in simulation theory. You said no. Like, I remember at the time I was quite surprised, but I think that whole simulation thing can lead you astray, because if you believe, like we touched on in the episode, if you believe you're in a simulation, then you're essentially saying that nothing is real. But that can't be the case, because we're both real. We're both speaking in this podcast now. The word simulation is overused so many times, and in conjunction with the word matrix, like they're both used so many times, that this whole idea of a simulation is fun, and it's true to an extent, but not really. Like, you know, we both touched on like decoding our lives, and perhaps suggesting that it's scripted or whatever. But the truth is as human beings, we can all change our destiny if you take action in your life. And the great movie The Adjustment Bureau shows you that you can adjust your life based on your actions. There is no specified script. Like, I think, because in sports they say, oh, it's scripted, it's rigged, like, but who's doing the rigging? Is a human being writing down, this player's going to score at that time? No, I think it's complete fallacy and it's ridiculous. All it is it's just predestined from whoever or whatever created this reality through manifestation, ultimately.
Yeah, 100%. Now, when you say simulation, I think in some regard it is a simulation, but I think at the
Completely.
same time, I feel like simulation, the word simulation, just doesn't really fully encapture or justify what we're experiencing necessarily. And I think the idea that,
100%.
say, like Elon Musk or these people want you to believe like, oh, it's a simulation, it's just a computer generated experience. I think that just takes away so much from what we're actually experiencing, and I think it takes away a lot of value. So if they push that idea, I think that's beneficial for them, because it kind of makes us feel like it doesn't really matter, so you can just do whatever you want. You can be hedonistic, you can just act like an idiot. There's no need for morals or anything like that, because it's just a simulation. It doesn't really matter. It's literally just like playing a video game, which I think in some aspects it is, but I still think there's a lot of value to be learned from this
Yeah.
experience. And I think it's just a surefire way to lead you down to like the black pill, where you're like, well, nothing matters, so there's no reason anyway. There's no reason to do anything valuable. You just become nihilistic if you think, oh, it's just a simulation. I think it's like a 50-50 bet at the end of the day, really, isn't it? You're flipping a coin as to what you want the experience to be. So like you can accept it as a simulation, that oh, it's just black pill. I'm just going to become nihilistic. I'm just going to be jerking off every day, and I don't want to go to work or anything like that, because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Or you can be like, oh, this is a valuable experience, and while I'm here, I'm going to spend time with my family, and I'm going to try and grow spiritually, mentally, physically, and get the most out of this experience as possible, and spend as much time with people who care about me as possible. So, yeah, I do think the sort of idea of simulation, I think things are predestined for sure, to some extent. I think there's like canon events. I don't know if you've seen Spider-Verse, the new Spider-Verse film.
No, I've not seen it. The reason why I haven't, because I saw on Instagram that there was something up with like one of the characters questioning her identity, so that put me off, because there's obviously some agenda behind that. I don't know if that's actually in the movie, but that was a post I saw.
I don't think there was, no, not really. No one questioning their
Fair
identity, I
enough.
would say. Not that I can remember anyway. Or at least it's not a significant part of the film. But
Fair enough.
yeah, the whole thing in that is that there's canon events and things that have to happen in the timeline, and if they don't happen, then it's sort of like it messes up the events that follow. And I think that's the case for things like 9/11. They just have to happen at some point in some stage. I don't know what you think about
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Like this whole like yeah, I think that is true. Like we see in life, like if you go down a path, you suffer, and then with that you have to overcome that suffering to get you on the right path. Like how we've met online through the whole idea of self improvement. That was because at some point in our lives we was not in the best position. You know, we was probably doing things that were degenerate at the time that brought us together on Patreon at the time with Adam, and now fast forward a couple of months after that period, we're doing the podcast together, and now almost a year later we're continuing that. So you know, things like that. So like you said about the path, some things can go off path, and then it's down to you to put yourself back into the right path again. And this comes down from like the whole idea that people say like life is a video game. Like I kind of realized that when I was like 14, 15, when I was walking on from school, because as a human being, you grow taller, you go through stages from being a baby to a toddler to a child to a teenager to an adult, and then finally to an elderly person. So in that sense, you could say like you're going up levels. So in that sense, people will tell you like, you know, level up your character, and it's completely true. Like if you see life as a video game, ideally you want to be the best character in the game, be the best. If you're a man, be the best man you could possibly be. If you're a woman, be the best woman that you could possibly be in all departments, you know, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, with family. So through that mindset, if you see life as a video game, that is great. But on the flip side, as video games show you, if you die, you can just respawn. But that's not always the case. That perhaps is not the case in this reality. So you kind of have to separate it in between. You kind of have to separate that in a sense between video game and real life, because ultimately they're not the same, even though it kind of feels like it.
Big facts. I think we're becoming a self improvement podcast now instead of a cult pod.
Yeah, I mean, these 37 minutes have, I mean, to be fair, we've touched on 9/11, so I wouldn't say that's self improvement, but it all
Very loosely.
connects.
No, no, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I was just talking about how you say like, oh, you want to up your character physically and mentally. I mean, I was saying the exact same thing. But yeah, 100%. I completely agree with you. It's like it's a twist of fate, really, isn't it? I mean, for people who
Yeah,
are like, oh, it's a complete simulation. I just want to leave this simulation and whatnot. What happens if, say, you get to the stage of like, oh, well, just kill myself because if it's a video game, then it doesn't really matter anyway. As you say, I'll just respawn. That's a bigger risk to take than to just live your life and try and become the best version of yourself. And if it is a simulation at the end, like, what have you lost? You've not lost anything. You've actually gained an experience rather than being like, I just need to leave. I just need to get out of this experience. And you kill yourself and then nothing happens. You know, it's like, oh, this was actually true because no one knows what the truth is at the end of the day. I mean, we can speculate as much as we want, but no one knows for sure. So your best bet is to just go with what seems like the smarter option and play it safe, if that makes sense. When I say play it safe, I mean just get as much out of this experience as possible.
yeah.
And
And
yeah, like you
the
say, it's a video
experience,
game. You're just upping your stats at the end of the day. You're upping your stats so you become the strongest you can possibly be. You know.
yeah, and ultimately, this whole experience is liberating. As they say, the truth sets you free. So, with the conspiracies, you can touch on it for a while. It makes you free in a sense. You've gotten all this knowledge. And then you can just use that to better your life situation. Ultimately, you know, you know what your truth is, because like you said, we don't know all the truth, but you know the truth in your mind, and then through that you can just level up your character. Sorry for being a self-improvement YouTuber at, in this moment, but it all
No, you're
connects
100%
because
right.
like because an awakening in a sense is a form of self-improvement. Okay, you've awakened, you've got to know this knowledge. That's an improvement from your previous self, right? So it all aligns together in this perfect reality.
Big facts. Big facts. And like we were saying earlier, like I feel like if you get too invested into sort of like the conspiracy side of things, then you know you can become very lost. And some people, like philosophers and stuff in the past, have questioned this reality so much that it just leads them to a place of psychosis. And I think it's designed that way. I think it's designed in a
Mm.
way that we're not supposed to know the full truth.
Yeah,
We're always chasing our tail. Is the Ouroboros, you know? It's the snake eating its own tail. I think that is the epitome of this reality, and especially like the conspiracy sort of space. It's just a snake eating its own tail at the end of the day, constantly looking for answers, and you're always chasing that final answer that you just come back round to the beginning again. And I think this whole reality is just designed that way anyway, you know,
yeah,
which is a pretty crazy thing to think about. Well, this is a great way to start the first episode of the podcast back from the hiatus. I'd say season two. Is it? Would you class this as season two? I don't know
yes,
if we're
I'd say
having
season.
seasons. Season
Yeah,
two.
yeah, season two. But yeah, that's the beauty thing. That's the beautiful thing about symbolism. Like as you said, the Ouroboros. I think now we know what it truly means. Like it applies in the conspiracy realm. Keep on going over and over and over again. There's no stopping. You know, the sine waves and cosine waves in mathematics show the exact same thing. It's just a continuation. So after realizing that, you have to put a stop to it and kind of, you know, I wouldn't say go live your day by day life like an NPC, but just better your life.
It's about having the awareness, isn't it? It's about having the
Yes.
awareness and being able to use it for your own good at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Like you can see the agendas that are happening now. I think the best thing to do is position yourself in a place where you know you're going to be safe. And this isn't to plug, say, like the FSC, but you need to find people who are like-minded, and you need to build a community, because community is going to be the thing that's going to help you out in the future. Where there's going to be no option for, if you're living in these 15-minute cities and there's no exit and you don't know people, you don't have connections or anything like that. It's going to become lonely. I think that's the main thing that is being pushed today. It's just separation. It's just trying to push loneliness and hedonism. It's stuff that destroys you to the soul, really. Like your soul doesn't feel good at the end of it. Like, you know, when you're sort of participating in degenerate behavior, you don't feel good in your soul. You don't feel good in your stomach. You don't feel like this is the right thing to do. But if you're doing things that feel right, say like working out or having a conversation with your friends or spending time with your family, you feel good, you know, or helping people out. So as I say, yeah, for like the upcoming events, I think it's best to position yourself in a situation where you take the knowledge of what's happening, you see it for what it is, and then you find a group of like-minded people, which is much easier said than done. But at the same time, it's becoming easier and easier now because we live in a world of such high connectivity that everyone's, you know, everyone's close.
Yeah. And this perfectly applies to the conspiracy thing because as people, when we awaken, you realize, hang on, I'm the only one who feels like this. So I want to be surrounded by others that feel this way as well. And, you know, you can all touch on about conspiracies, but even in that sense, there's a section, perhaps there's many conspiracy communities that are quite toxic. You have people debating over if this is true or this is not. So that in itself can lead you astray, you know, having debates with people over these topics, which is not very good for your mind. You know, at the end of the day, this knowledge has been given to you for you to be liberated, not to have debates with people on whether this was true or whether 9/11 was a real, or whether mud flood was a hoax, or whether, you know, man went to the moon. It's not. This knowledge wasn't designed for that. I believe anyway. So I think again,
Facts.
as human beings, we want to surround ourselves with people that want to make us better, and that's ultimately what life is. A journey. This journey is for us to find our true friends, our true peers, like, in a sense, and live the best life possible. And in the conspiracy field, it's until you get out of situations where you're debating with people on whether this is true, until you find your circle, you still essentially enclosed in that rabbit hole.
Facts. It's all ego at the end of the day. I think they just want us fighting amongst each other, wherever that be, over race, over gender, over conspiracies. They just want people arguing because it's easier to control. And if you've got 50 people on one side and 50 people on the other, it's easier to control than a group of 100 people
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
it's like all the agendas on the world stage. The best thing to do is just to ignore it. You know, you don't give it any energy while you're, like, we all have opinions. You know, we all know how degenerate Western society is, but there's no point in me ranting over it. I just live my life, and I'm sure the same is for you, Rowan, as well. Like, we all know the agendas of the WHO, but I'm not going to sit there and rant about it because you're giving energy to these people. And that's no good, in my opinion. Ultimately, you want to improve your life, improve your situation, and ultimately better it, instead of speaking about the elites or spending too much time looking at conspiracies all day. It's no good for the mind.
No, 100%. Yeah. Well, you just become psychotic, really. And I think the more you're disconnected from reality, the easier you are to control. So, big facts. But then again, I think when we're doing this podcast, season 2, we're not going to be talking about this sort of subject all the time. We are actually going to be delving into conspiracies. So, keep one foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, that's it. Like what we've said, it may seem ironic based on what we've said. Like like we said, you have to have a balance. Again, like we said, it's always good to talk about. It's fun to talk about. But as Rowan said, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Just keep a good balance between reality and, what would you call conspiracy reality? Let's say, I don't know, the conspiracy reality. Let's say,
The occult. Yes.
the occult. That's it.
The yin and the yang.
Yeah.
I personally think that's a brilliant place to end off. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I agree. So
Excellent.
yeah, there's a long pause there, but
we're just trying to work out who's going to do the outro.
yeah.
We've
This will
got
be cut for sure, but
Donald Trump on the outro now as well. So shout out to Big D.
yeah, top man.
hooking us up.
Top man is obviously he's looking to become president of the US in 2024, so that will likely cause some debate, which isn't necessary for the American people. But hey,
No.
people will do as they wish. You know, it's not up for us to save anybody.
100%. I think that's a brilliant topic to touch on next episode as well. The whole election thing that's going on at the minute, because I think there's a lot in that, and there's a lot of people thinking and saying that Donald Trump will be the last president of the United States.
Brilliant. Anyway, thank you very much for listening back. For those that are new, consider liking the video if you're on YouTube, or leaving a review if you're on Spotify or Apple or any other audio podcast player. And we're back again, and it's going to be talk.
Back.
And yes, we're back. And like I said again, thanks for listening in and tuning in. And we'll see you next time discussing perhaps the upcoming president of the United States in 2024, Mr. Donald Trump.
Peace.
Peace.
This is the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, saying thank you so much, okay, for tuning in for this episode of the Occult Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and also comment because it helps the algorithm. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, go to @theoccultpod_13. That is for Instagram and Twitter. And have a great rest of your day, okay? Thank you so much.